In 2019, the President of the United States called the Danish Prime Minister to ask whether Denmark would sell Greenland. She said no, described the idea as absurd, and cut short a planned state visit in protest. In early 2025, a different American president raised the idea again, this time with less politeness and more persistence, suggesting that all options, including military ones, were on the table. 85% of Greenlanders polled said they did not want to join the United States. Danish citizens, in a moment of dry Nordic humor, launched a petition to buy California in retaliation. The world's most powerful country has now tried twice, publicly, to acquire a territory of 56,000 people. That number is worth sitting with for a moment. 56,000. There are American high schools with higher enrollment than the entire population of Greenland. The island itself is enormous, the largest on Earth that is not a continent, spanning 2,166,000 square kilometers, an area larger than the combined territories of France, Germany, Spain, Portugal, the United Kingdom, and Italy. On that vast island, 56,000 people live. Almost all of them captures in small coastal towns along a thin strip of ice-free land, because 81% of the interior is buried under an ice sheet up to 4 kilometers thick. The United States wants to own this place badly enough to raise the subject twice in 6 years. And the reason why tells you almost everything you need to know about what Greenland is and what it is about to become. But before we get to that, we need to talk about what has kept Greenland alive for the past several decades. Because the strategic minerals and the geopolitical significance and the Trump controversies are all relatively new conversations. The old conversation, the one that has run continuously for generations, is simpler and colder and more honest. Fish. Specifically, cold water shrimp and Greenland halibut. These two species, pulled from some of the most productive and frigid waters on Earth, account for roughly 90% of everything Greenland sells to the world. In a country with no oil production, minimal manufacturing, almost no agriculture, and a terrain that makes infrastructure building extraordinarily expensive, the ocean has been the economy. The fish pay for almost everything. And understanding how that happened and what is now threatening it is the real Greenland story. Start with the water. Everything about Greenland's fishing economy begins with the particular character of the ocean that surrounds it. The seas of Greenland's coasts sit where warm North Atlantic currents collide with cold Arctic water, a mixing zone that creates exceptional conditions for marine life. Cold water holds more oxygen than warm water. Oxygen-rich water supports dense populations of the small organisms that form the base of the food chain. Dense food chains support dense fish populations. The result is an ocean that has fed Inuit communities for 4,500 years and that still produces some of the most concentrated cold water fisheries anywhere on the planet. The Inuit people who arrived in Greenland across multiple migration waves from North America understood this intuitively. Fishing was not an industry for them, it was survival, woven into culture, embedded in language, inseparable from identity. The techniques they developed, the knowledge of where fish gathered, when they ran, how they moved with the seasons, accumulated over millennia and became the foundation on which everything that followed was built. When Danish missionaries and colonizers arrived in the 18th century under the Norwegian priest Hans Egede, they found communities entirely organized around what the sea produced. They did not change that relationship, they commercialized it. For most of the colonial period and through the 20th century, Greenlandic fishing operated within frameworks set by Copenhagen. The fish came from Greenlandic waters, caught by Greenlandic fishermen, but the decisions about how much could be caught, where it could be sold, and on whose terms it would be traded were made far away by people who had never seen a Greenlandic winter. This was the central frustration of Greenlandic politics for decades, and it produced one of the most extraordinary political acts in modern European history. In 1979, Denmark granted Greenland home rule, giving it control over most domestic affairs, including, critically, its own fisheries. That was significant, but what happened 3 years later was more significant still. In 1982, Greenland held a referendum on whether to remain in the European Economic Community, the predecessor to the European Union, which it had joined as part of Denmark in 1973. The result was decisive. Greenland voted to leave. Not because of anything resembling the complex cultural and sovereignty debates that would drive the British Brexit campaign decades later, but for one specific and practical reason: fishing quotas. The EEC's Common Fisheries Policy determined how much fish member states could catch from shared European waters, and Greenland's membership meant that European fleets had rights to fish in Greenlandic waters under those same shared rules. Greenland wanted those waters for itself. In 1985, it became the only territory in history to exit a predecessor of the European Union, and it did so essentially to protect its fish. The negotiation that followed produced an arrangement that still holds today. The European Union pays Greenland approximately 320 million Danish kroner annually for access to fish in Greenlandic waters. In exchange, EU vessels are permitted to operate in certain zones under agreed quotas. Greenland simultaneously receives duty-free access to the EU market for its own fish exports, worth considerably more than the access payment. It is one of the stranger trade relationships in the world. A territory of 56,000 people that left a political bloc to reclaim control of its fish, then sold that bloc a portion of the fishing rights anyway, while keeping the best terms for itself. The two species at the center of this economy are worth understanding specifically, because they are not interchangeable. They represent different depths, different habitats, and different economic profiles that together give Greenland's fishing industry its particular character. Cold water shrimp, known scientifically as Pandalus borealis and commercially as Arctic shrimp or northern shrimp, live in deep, cold water across the North Atlantic. Greenland's shrimp grounds, particularly in the Davis Strait between Greenland and Canada, have for decades been among the most productive in the world. These small, sweet, pink shrimp are harvested by large factory trawlers that can process and freeze product at sea, allowing them to operate in remote areas far from shore facilities. At their peak, shrimp alone accounted for over 50% of Greenland's export earnings. The entire economy of several Greenlandic towns was built around shrimp processing plants that employed significant fractions of the local population. For a generation of Greenlanders, shrimp was not just food, it was the paycheck.
Greenland halibut is the other pillar. These deep water flatfish, caught at depths that require long lines and specialized gear, produces a dense, wide-fleshed fillet with a distinctive flavor that commands premium prices in Asian markets, particularly Japan. Royal Greenland, the state-owned seafood company that is Greenland's largest employer, has built a global distribution network for Greenlandic halibut that reaches markets in over 30 countries. The company operates processing facilities not just in Greenland itself, but in Canada, Germany, and elsewhere, employing more workers outside Greenland than within it. That last fact is revealing. The fish starts in Greenlandic water, but much of the value added in cleaning, filleting, packaging, and distributing it happens somewhere with better infrastructure, lower costs, and more workers available. Greenland catches the fish. The world turns it into profit. In 2023, the fishing industry generated 5.3 billion Danish kroner, approximately $780 million in export revenues, representing 23% of GDP and over 90% of total export value. The fishing and fish processing sector directly employs approximately 15% of the workforce. Total exports for 2024 were recorded at $1.58 billion, overwhelmingly fish and shellfish. For a country of 56,000 people,
These are numbers that sustain a functioning modern society with publicly funded healthcare, education, and social services, supplemented by a Danish block grant of approximately 3.9 billion Danish kroner per year, that currently covers roughly half of government revenue. That Danish subsidy is the other pillar of the economy, and it shapes everything about how Greenland functions as a state. Denmark contributes roughly 25% of Greenland's entire GDP through this annual transfer, which is constitutionally structured as a block grant given in exchange for Denmark retaining control of Greenland's foreign policy and defense. The arrangement has sustained Greenland's standard of living at a level that would otherwise be impossible for an economy so narrow and so geographically challenged. It has also, for independence-minded Greenlanders, been the central obstacle to full sovereignty. An independent Greenland that loses the Danish block grant would need to replace that income from somewhere. At current fishing revenues, it cannot. The fish economy is substantial, but not sufficient for a fully self-funded state. This is where the story gets complicated, because the ocean that has sustained Greenland for generations is changing in ways that are both threat and promise simultaneously. And the response required is one that neither the fishing industry nor the government has fully worked out yet. The threat is this: cold water shrimp require cold water. As the Arctic warms faster than almost anywhere else on Earth, the water temperatures in traditional Greenlandic shrimp grounds are rising. The shrimp are not dying, they are moving. They are tracking northward, following the colder water as it retreats toward higher latitudes. Statistics Greenland's own data shows that 80% of the shrimp biomass in Greenlandic waters is now found north of the 66th parallel, compared to a much more southerly distribution in the mid-2000s. This migration is ongoing. The shrimp processing plants that were built in southern Greenlandic towns to be near the fishing grounds are now poorly positioned relative to where the fish actually are. In 2025, shrimp export values fell by nearly 20% compared to the previous year, a loss of approximately 325 million Danish kroner, driven by both lower volumes and lower prices. For an economy where shrimp has historically been the single largest export category, that is not a minor fluctuation. That is a structural shift. The promise is more complicated. As the water warms and shrimp retreat northward, Atlantic cod, which prefers slightly warmer temperatures, has been returning to Greenlandic waters in increasing numbers after a long absence. Cod was historically fished by Norse and European vessels in Greenlandic waters for centuries, before populations collapsed in the 20th century. Its return offers a potential new revenue stream, and the data from 2025 is striking. Cod export values rose by nearly 75% in the first 8 months of that year, driven by a 48% increase in volume and rising prices. Greenland's fishermen and fish companies are adapting, pivoting processing capacity and fishing effort toward cod as the shrimp picture darkens. Whether cod can replace shrimp economically remains to be seen. The species occupy different market segments, require different processing, and face different quota constraints under international agreements. What the climate shift reveals most clearly is the fundamental vulnerability of an economy built almost entirely on one category of resource. When 90% of your exports are fish, and the fish populations are moving in response to environmental changes outside your control, you have very little buffer. Greenland has known this for years. The government has repeatedly announced intentions to diversify the economy, to build sectors beyond fishing, to develop the tourism infrastructure that has been growing modestly, to attract investment in the mineral resources that the melting ice is gradually exposing. The translation of those intentions into reality has been slow, partly because of the genuine logistical difficulty of building anything in a country where most towns have no road connections to each other, and everything moves by boat, helicopter, or small aircraft. And partly because the fishing industry, while increasingly under pressure, still works well enough to reduce the urgency of finding an alternative. The minerals are the wild card. Beneath the ice, and beneath the tundra that the ice is retreating to expose, Greenland contains deposits of rare earth elements, uranium, iron ore, gold, and other materials that the 21st century economy needs in enormous quantities. The rare earth deposits in southern Greenland are particularly significant, containing elements essential for the magnets used in electric vehicle motors and wind turbines, the precise materials that the global green energy transition requires, in volumes that current supply chains cannot satisfy. China currently dominates rare earth production and processing globally. Western governments are urgently seeking alternatives. Greenland's deposits sit in a geography controlled by a small, self-governing territory of 56,000 people, with complicated feelings about foreign investment and strong environmental constituencies that have already blocked mining projects on ecological grounds. This is why American presidents keep raising the subject of acquisition. The calculation is not about fish. It is about the rare earths, about the Arctic shipping routes that are opening as sea ice retreats, about the strategic value of controlling the largest island in the world as the Arctic becomes increasingly accessible and increasingly contested. The fish, which have paid for almost everything in Greenland for generations, are becoming a prelude to a different conversation about what Greenland is worth and who gets to decide what happens to it. Eric the Red was an Icelandic Norse explorer who was banished from Iceland in approximately 982 CE for committing manslaughter, not for the first time. He sailed west, found the large island, spent 3 years exploring it, and returned to Iceland to recruit settlers. The name he chose for the island was Greenland. The interior of Greenland is buried under an ice sheet, and was then as it is now. The coastal strips where settlers would actually live were rocky tundra. Eric the Red knew exactly what he was doing. He later acknowledged, in a source that survives to this day, that the attractive name was chosen to make people want to go there. The most famous real estate marketing lie in history is approximately 1,040 years old. The Norse settlers who followed Eric the Red established colonies in southern Greenland that persisted for roughly 500 years. They raised livestock, built churches, traded with Europe, and maintained a society at the very edge of what the climate permitted. Then, around 1500 CE, they disappeared. Every one of them. The settlements were abandoned, the cattle were gone, the people had vanished, and the reason has never been definitively established. Climate cooling, conflict with Inuit populations, collapse of trade routes, disease, starvation, voluntary departure. Historians have argued every position, and no consensus has emerged. 500 years of Norse settlement in Greenland ended in silence, and no one knows exactly why. The ice sheet that covers 81% of Greenland contains approximately 10% of all the fresh water on Earth. If it melted entirely, global sea levels would rise by approximately 7.2 meters. The cities that would be affected by even a partial melting include Miami, Shanghai, Mumbai, Amsterdam, and most of the world's major coastal urban centers. Greenland's ice is not just Greenland's concern. In 2021, rain fell on the summit of the Greenland ice sheet for the first time in recorded history. The summit, which sits at more than 3,200 meters above sea level and had maintained temperatures below freezing essentially continuously throughout human memory, got rained on. Scientists called it a significant climate signal. It happened again. In the northern town of Qaanaaq, which sits closer to the North Pole than to Denmark, the sun does not rise for more than 3 consecutive months during winter. Not briefly, not occasionally. Every day for over 90 days, the sun remains below the horizon. Darkness is the default state. In summer, the same town experiences continuous daylight for a similar period. The people of northern Greenland live in a world where the relationship between time and light is fundamentally different from what most humans experience, and they have built their culture, their hunting rhythms, and their social patterns around these extremes
for thousands of years. The Ilulissat Ice Fjord on Greenland's west coast is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and the most productive glacier in the Northern Hemisphere. Enormous icebergs calve from the Sermek-Kujalek Glacier continuously, some of them taller than 20-story buildings, and drift south through the fjord into Disco Bay before eventually melting in the North Atlantic. The iceberg that struck the RMS Titanic in 1912 almost certainly originated in this fjord. The glacier that produced it is still producing bergs at the same rate, and the rate is accelerating as the ice sheet responds to warming. The Kalaallisut language, also known as West Greenlandic, spoken by the majority Inuit population, is a polysynthetic language in which entire sentences can be expressed in a single word by combining a root with multiple suffixes. The word naperinek, for instance, conveys the concept of meeting someone unexpectedly in a way that English requires several words to approximate. The language encodes Arctic knowledge, seasonal understanding, and relationship structures that have no equivalent in European languages. And it nearly did not survive Danish colonization, which at various points suppressed its use in education and public life. It was declared the official language of Greenland only in 2009. What Greenland is right now is a place in the middle of several transitions at once. The fish that paid for everything for generations are migrating north in response to warming water. The minerals that could replace fish revenues are available but politically and logistically difficult to extract. The Danish subsidy that fills the gap between what fish earn and what a modern society costs is sustainable for now, but creates a dependency that limits true sovereignty. An independence movement argues that Greenland should control its own future, and that future includes the mineral wealth, while acknowledging that fiscal self-sufficiency is not yet achievable. And somewhere in Washington, the calculation of Greenland's strategic value keeps getting more favorable. The 56,000 people living on the world's largest island did not ask to be at the center of Arctic geopolitics. They did not ask the shrimp to migrate northward, or the ice to melt, or the rare earths beneath their feet to become essential to the global energy transition. They asked for a reasonable life in an extraordinary landscape, sustained for now by what the cold ocean provides: cold water shrimp, Greenland halibut, Atlantic cod returning from a long absence, and the processing plants that turn the catch into an export that keeps the lights on. The fish still pay for almost everything. For how much longer, nobody quite knows.